I come from Ministry of Finance, and we are building a national artificial intelligence program called Aurora AI, and that is something that we are talking about here today. As mentioned, here is Tommi Mikkonen, and Tommi has been involved with this program and initiatives like for maybe 1 year or so.
A little bit more than 1 year.
Yeah.
No, it's your.
Yeah, great. And it's a huge shift that we are seeking. It's not just like based on artificial intelligence. Of course, that is one key component of that, but still we are seeking more than just AI activities. And if we start with just one video that presents some idea about what kind of objectives we are seeking in the not maybe near future, but in the next decade or so.
Wouldn't it be nice to live in a society where everyone can get personally tailored suggestions on, for example, places to study or work? The kind of society where businesses can flourish and new employees can be hired easily. And where you can be offered a physiotherapy appointment when you need it. All this is possible. Society can be more proactive and anticipate needs when public services are also based on events in people's lives and in the business world. We have already taken steps in this direction, an example being the pre-completed tax return forms. Usually these only need checking over. When data is utilized effectively in all areas of life, smoothly joined up services are possible, and data can be put to work for the benefit of customers. The government is then an enabler, with services being provided on the basis of genuine needs of people and businesses. The data and the technology already exist. Now what we need is to change the way we do things. First, we need the right provider for each set of services. Then, by experimenting, we can ensure services that fit real events. And so, we can create proactive services together. Join us at Suomi Digi to create something new and exciting.
Yeah, so basically this video, actually we made this video 3 years ago, so it takes a bit of a time to get from visionary idea to some sort of a production phase, and we are still not on a production phase. We are not yet on production phase, but we have been like this year in a phase where we have the mandate and the resources and the investments that helps us to put us on production in the next 3 years. But now we talk about how we managed to came here and what are the objectives based on that.
Well, what you didn't say is that we have a couple of prototype services like this Osaamispotti where people can find jobs and enhance their learning objectives and so on. So there are individual services available, but they are like, how would I put it? They are like single points in the space that we actually are going to need in the future.
Yeah, basically we are building our society in a like where like this customer centricity involves still this organizational perspective. So basically we mandate different organizations to do different things, and through that perspective these organizations are doing their own services and their own customer oriented services, and that doesn't eventually bring us to the human centricity, and that is the place we try to empower these AI activities as well for the benefit of people. And this is something maybe, I'm not sure if there is anybody who has been involved with the AI, to the age of AI program.
I think some of you at least.
That was one part and just one example what our previous government has been done on a political stage. And our parliament and our government, both of our previous governments has been very interested about boosting AI activities in our society. And even though those discussions were quite in a higher level, that basically doesn't matter, since we need that kind of discussions and debate in our society in order to push these big wheels on going to the direction that pushes the real AI activities as well. And in that sense, one of the key objectives in this work was to put the people at the center of everything. And maybe one of the key struggle for every societies in the world is like we can put in our PowerPoint slides the people at the center, but how we really do the change within our society, and that is something that we try to achieve with the Aurora AI. And there is few, not too many, but few examples of studies that has been studied different governances and how they varies when they are proceeding with the real implementation of artificial intelligence. And if you are willing to seek more details, you can go to OECD. They have a AI primer paper for that. And actually they said, when they studied Finland and the Aurora AI, they said that Finland has one of the most interesting strategies in the whole world. And that is not because of the technological innovations that we are utilizing. It's more like how we utilize and how we try to proceed with these initiatives to push our society forward. And the higher landscape, when we go to as Finland is part of the European Union, we need to consider the whole area in Europe and how different organizations and countries are evolving and developing their own strategies. If you know how, for example, France is pushing their AI activities, they have a great idea about how these real actions should be done, and they have been talking about lots of great investments, but still the real execution plans lacks. And the same goes to the European Union states as well. So basically we have great challenges to push our European Union these AI activities forward in the European Union level. But still now the union that are run by this Miss Ursula von der Leyen, she's pushing these AI activities, as well as Mrs. Sirpa Paatero here in Finland. And Mr. Pekka Ala-Pietilä is a chair for this high-level expert group on artificial intelligence that have helped European Union activities to push forward. That isn't a part of the European Union organizations. That is more like an expert group to consult the European Union phase, and hopefully that pushes it real forward. And as we are going drill down to the real phase in Finland, actually this is a picture I took from our cottage. Last summer it was Antti Rinne's governmental program, but still our government has been resigned, yeah. And the new government led by Miss Sanna Marin has came, but they still hold the same governmental program. And in this governmental program, we go to this real statement about Aurora AI. So in order you to understand of what is the anchor states, what we are discussing here today. So basically in this governmental program, there says that secure and ethically sustainable development of the Aurora AI network will be continued as permitted by the overall spending limits in order to make everyday life and business easier. And that is basically the baseline of on top we are proceeding our actives in the next 3 years. If you wish to talk something about the basic ideology about
sure. Like it was mentioned already, the same stuff as still holds, secure and ethically sustainable thing. But in reality, what is actually being built is a loosely coupled network of services that somehow are allowed to talk about you in exchange for offering you better services. It is still unclear that how much permission asking and stuff like that is going to happen. But in the end, I do believe that these services will work, well, in the positive sense, the same way that the tax information form today. I mean, it has been made really easy. And same thing should actually be true for many of the other things. And the goal here, of course, in the long run is to create savings for the administration or the public sector. But this will be done so that if you know what you're doing, you can be digitally doing your things, and human resources and other expensive stuff is saved for those who actually need them. So I was contacted by Helsingin Sanomat, the Helsinki area newspaper, about 2 weeks ago, and they were asking that how do I believe this will happen? And when I said that, well, the same way as the tax form, that you get to know what you have and you can fix things if you want, but for the 80% of the time, I think it is a good match. At least when I have been checking the new stuff, all has been there. The only things that I have had to put there myself is that if I have been building something in my house or renovating. And then the reporter said, well, the tax is easy because it has been there for so long time. Can you give me another example? And then I said, well, my father died during the fall, and I would really have loved to have a service that tells me that we know and that your father has passed. We are so sorry for you. Here are a couple of practical things how to move forward. What are the things you must do, and so on. And the reporter was silent or the newspaperman was silent for 10 seconds, and he said that, well, I have the same experience. You're absolutely right. And even, I mean, in that case, I am actually sure that by interviewing 5 people, you could build a process that is 90% covering for things like that. It's just that we don't have the habit of thinking the way that people are needing the service. We just think that, well, this goes to this sector, this is the church thing, this is the legal thing, this is the inheritance thing, and so on. And all are taken care of by different authorities. And really, the idea is that we humans would be empowered to live our lives, and the state would be like a helpful elf that steps in whenever we need assistance. So you want to take this?
Yeah. And as Tommi mentioned about the challenges when it goes to somebody has died, the challenge, that is a great example about why we have built this whole society from organizational perspective, since every of these mandates and tasks has been divided into different organizations. So basically, if you look this picture, there is we call this Stiglitz model. That is a Stiglitz commission that has been done. It is like an asset model for people. So it basically says that that well-being is multidimensional, and you need to consider all of these aspects simultaneously. And actually, we are not considering these aspects simultaneously, since we have been divided these mandates into different sectors. So we talk about social and healthcare reform, we talk about education, personal activities, political voice and governance, social connections and relationships, material living standards, environment, security and insecurity. And all of these areas has been divided into different organizations who are providing their own services, right? And that is the challenge we try to tackle with the new technologies and the better understanding of people's multidimensional well-being. And these indicators are just indicators from OECD, and we just say that there are plenty of different indicators that tells you something about people's well-being in macro level, and we can go into individual level to understand people's well-being, but basically we need to consider all of these aspects together. Yeah.
Well, that said, we already had the very negative experience or the example of somebody dying. Well, in a way, if you look anybody's life, it can be regarded as a series of events that happen. So you start school, build a family, give birth to a child.
Maybe lose a connection to computer.
Yeah, lose a connection to the computer and feel embarrassed.
They promised to correct it through, but apparently haven't yet.
Yeah, wait a second, I will get back. Nothing happens. Yeah, maybe.
And so on. So, what are we actually doing is that we are kind of looking at the different bits and pieces we today have and try to organize them into groups of services that somehow go hand in hand. Obviously, there are, how would I say it, blocks that say that, well, you can't use somebody's health data and you can't do this and you can't do that. But it turns out that if us people offer our data, there's an initiative called My Data, for instance, in Finland, where you can open your personal data reserves for serving, well, helping the society to serve you better. And with those kind of constructs, it is possible to start building totally new kinds of services. In the prototype phase, or in these 3 years, what we are trying to do is focus on 3 different life events. So Evelina is a sample young person who is facing the risk of being alienated from society. And I know that this is a very difficult thing to fix by services only. There probably will be something else, but that is at least a good prototype service to calculate out what this might mean. Number 2 of the things in no particular order is Katsu, who is moving to Finland and wants to get a job and get integrated into Finnish society. And third one is Markku, who is close to 60 and wants to stay in the working life. What can he do, and how can the society serve him?
And basically all of these aspects, when we are figuring out these 3 life events, we're figuring out how we maintain this well-being. So basically, for example, in this Markku case, we're not interested about people who are already lost their jobs. We are interested about those people who might be lose their job in the next 3 or 5 years or so. So basically, we try to ask from ourselves that what should we do in order to help Markku to empower himself to get better and better in the labor market and go progress without losing his job or without shifting to the other job.
Well, what does this call for? This is about building a situational awareness around these things, and that, of course, calls for an analysis. Number 1 is picking a life event. So one of the 3 in this phase. Number 2 is figuring out which data we can get and from where, and what are the legal obstacles, and what are the social obstacles, and what are the acceptance obstacles, and so on. And finally, create a data model of us citizens that can be used to predict what are our needs in the future. And finally, we at least like to get to the level of being able to try this out a little bit. Can we actually make predictions out of the data model of a citizen that we've been building.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So the big internet companies already have this situation analysis built in?
Yeah, I am sure big companies have it, but no society have it.
Yeah, and that's totally true, and that is the challenge, since you can see basically the whole world from 3 different perspectives, and the question is that who is controlling the people's data. And in that sense, for example, Google is controlling our data, and the other dimension is this governance is controlling your data. For example, there are lots of like Big Brother societies in the world who are willing to govern their people and control their people.
So do you think that the Chinese government don't have this? I am sure they do have it.
Yeah, they have it all, yeah. But in this sense, we try to build the way that people themselves control their data. So these are the 3 different aspects in the globally, and that the third one is something that we try to achieve here.
And Aape, your point is absolutely correct. In Finland, I think that at least S Group and OP are both trying to create a model where they offer life as a service.
Yeah.
So you are a member of either OP or S Group, and they will do about the same thing, except that they cannot do it for the state, but they do it for everything they can commercially do.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want to show the video?
No, we can proceed in order to spare time.
Yeah. So here's the old way. Everything is, well, how would I put it? Split to a different information system hosted by different municipalities or organizations, and none of them wants to talk to each other. For some of them, I understand that yes, it might be a good thing that for instance, Supo doesn't share, or the secret police of Finland doesn't share everything they have on people. But in some cases, it is just that we are not accustomed to sharing data with anyone. And we really want to turn this the other way around, so that us citizens could offer our data, and that would help the society to serve us better.
Yeah, and we will come back to this cluster analysis that is on the right of this picture. So, but basically, we are not seeking a Big Brother society where individuals are identified. More like we try to understand the volumes and the characteristics of different people in different life events and situations in order to optimize the service provisioning, whether or not the services come from public or private or third sector.
And I would say that in the end, if and when we are successful, this is actually creating a new type of platform model where it is the individual citizens who own their data and make it available. And then the society can be proactive and seek help, seek opportunities to help the citizens. Well, this will be organized around live events like we already talked about, and finally the role of Aurora AI is to accelerate this kind of development.
Yeah, and this is quite full of everything, this image, but basically I try to open some dimensions that we need to consider simultaneously. As we were talking about, I want this stick now. As we were talking about this multidimensional well-being, so basic and this life event approach, that is basically just one thing and module in this whole systemical shift, that we need lots of different kind of enablers and prerequisites. If we go to enablers, basically from Ministry of Finance perspective, we are interested about the public services in general, but people perspective, they are not considering just public services, of course. They are considering any kind of services, whether or not they come from Google or small companies or etc. And that's why we need to understand how these services are really interacting with each other in these live events. and that is like a technological, agnostical way, and that is, of course, the greatest challenge in this sense. Information management in general, that goes to the data economy and the great questions of why Google or any smaller company are willing to share their data and create the real data ecosystem around people's life events. And know-how, not just for the organizations, but for the people themselves, of how we really help people themselves to understand their own well-being and utilize these kind of data assets. Since that isn't enough to just build the, let's say, data wallets and say to people that, okay, you have lots of data here, just utilize whatever you like. So, of course, we need to build services through this data for the people. Investments, that is actually a much bigger issue that we think, since nowadays we allocate public money into the organizations who provide their own services. And this kind of operating model could enable us to make new kind of incentive models, where, for example, we use token economy, where these tokens are like basically smart money within these life events, and these tokens can be incentivize people to make better and more efficient services for the people in these life events, and these tokens could be like some sort of an real business to different organizations. So basically, in the end, we are not pushing 100% of the investments into the organizations, more like we are putting allocating money behind the people, and people themselves are like pushing their life in the different life events, and these incentives are changing, hopefully. Digital trust, that is of course a huge issue here. So since if we lose trust, we lose like huge amounts of different things, not just the Aurora AI activities. It's like more like how we regain trust within our society, as Finland is one of the most trusted nation, if I can say that. So basically, we need to maintain the issue globally. And there has been lots of global ethical consideration. For example, Meri Haataja has been running these kind of issues globally, not just in Finland. And the leadership things, as in the, I have to go back a few slides. So nowadays, this leadership goes to through these organizations in this sense. So basically, each of these organizations holds their own leader, and they are just like pushing their own agenda in this whole society. And the leadership, it's like basically going to co-leadering these multidimensional well-being. That is a great challenge. So basically, if we get a round table and all of these organizations to join co-managing these multidimensional well-being, it's like some sort of a war room to build around people's well-being, and that is a huge challenge to make that really happen. And last but not least is the legislation. Since, as all of us know about the GDPR, and we have lots of nationwide legislation, and we have the challenges, for example, the automating services in general in public governance. So there are plenty of challenges, since every of our legislations are based on analog world. Since we have been built our society like hundreds of years, and this digital economy and digitalization is rather new idea when it goes to reforming society, and that's why the legislation lags behind a lot of stuff. And in Finland, these platforms, whether or not it's digital or physical, we are in a bit great shape compared to any other societies, but of course we have challenges in that sense as well. Yeah.
Well, that said, one of the reasons we wanted to keep this talk is that there's gazillion research ideas revolving around these ideas. So if I start from here, leadership. What kind of a leadership do you need in order to build new services and in a proactive fashion, proactive services, and yet you can't really lead using the money as the only carrot you have? interesting how this is going to happen. Can we build some kind of a token economy so that every Finn would get a certain amount of tokens to be used for different things? For instance, laws, trust and cyber. Who's responsible for considering ethical things, and who decides what is ethical enough? I have no idea. Competencies. What are the new know-how that are needed? I would also like to add that there are probably also old competencies that has to be applied a little bit different way than previously, because we are in the context of state services. Interoperability of platforms, it's clearly a technical challenge, and it is difficult to underestimate it if you think about the sheer number of systems that are in use. I heard about 5 years ago that city of Tampere has more than 500 different IT systems that don't talk to each other. And I don't want to think what is the situation at state level. Service provisioning. How do you really say to someone that, hey, it looks like that you are needing help? We probably are, most of us at least, are old enough to remember the paper clipper in one of the Windows versions that said that it looks like you could use our help, and that moment, well, how would I put it? It was more annoying than helpful.
Maybe we would reinvent the paper clipper
exactly.
in the Sonora AI for every citizen in Finland.
Then how to do this situational analysis to begin with? What are the things to look for, and how good are we at protecting things? And finally, what is a digital twin for a citizen?
Yeah, so the potential when it goes to machine learning or AI activities, we haven't been drilled down too deeply, but when it goes to, for example, optimizing the service provisioning in these clusters around different life events, that is something where we need reinforcement learning or anything that helps us to get feedback for the citizens and the people when they are utilizing different services, and that is some sort of a signal that we lack in our society, and we need that kind of signals into our system to get better and better. And we need that kind of system, we need that kind of feedback multidimensional way. So basically that isn't enough that we try to get the feedback from just one endpoint services. We need like situational analysis and feedback from people's situation in different life events, and utilize that kind of feedback to get the service provisioning better and better. And that should help lower the failure demand. That should decrease failure demand and increase the service provisioning for people to get better and better optimized services for themselves. So nowadays, our society doesn't function like that. We just basically say that, okay, everybody needs to pay taxes, and we have the same form for everybody or same automatically system for everybody. But there are still lots of different kind of, let's say, entrepreneurs that should need different kind of services from tax administration, and they can't help give these services since they have like just one way to provide their services nowadays.
And this is actually going to change rapidly because more and more forest owners are living in the cities, and they have a special tax form as well.
Yeah. And this isn't just about the service provision. This is also how to lead the whole society in general. As I am right under our ministers and the governance, and as every governance are trying to push our society forward, but still they lack the real information about people's well-being. So basically they are just trying to optimize our structures and mandates, and they are dividing whether or not it's a social and healthcare reform that never goes on production. So basically all of these reforms are considering this system. And now we try to provide new kind of situational analysis for the leadership as well. So basically, this is a real data from Turku area. There is a first year graders from the university in Turku district, and there is an 8 clusters that has been done through neural network modeling. And Gofore was a company that was providing this cluster analysis. And basically now we know that the first year graders in Turku district, there are, for example, active females in their social relations and careers. The amount of people was like 400 or so. So we know that 87 out of 400 is in this cluster. And we also know that basically everything about their multidimensional well-being is on green or better than the other clusters. So now we can ask, when we are optimizing the service provisioning, are these the people who are really in need of the new services? Basically, it seems that these people are already doing well in their own lives. But if we go to the top right, we can see people struggling with their worries. We see lots of males, and we see lots of babies. So basically, if you have lots of small babies and you're male in Turku area, so it seems that your multidimensional well-being isn't going too well. So this is actually some sort of a market data to any service provider who are willing to provide services in Turku district. And this kind of cluster analysis we are trying to build in the next 3 years. And these clusters should be optimizing the Aurora AI network and the provisioning of the services within this network. And we utilize already existing technologies and digital platforms. Let's say that in Suomi we have the Suomi.fi services. It's like some sort of a backbone for the digital infrastructure. And one of these services is called Service Catalog. And that is a metadata for every public services in Finland, and the legislation already says that we can put private and third sector services within this service catalog as well. So we don't have any legislation that says that you cannot push every services. So that is something that we are utilizing in this sense. So basically we push all of these metadata about the service provisioning within the service catalog and optimize the provisioning of the services from there into these clusters. And with the reinforcement learning, we try to optimize better and better the service provisioning for the people. So that's why we need the feedback from the people of how these services are really bringing value to you or not. Yeah. And this is just like the other perspective for the life event approach. So that's why we are talking about more like an operating model. And in the future, hopefully, if we prove this right, the next government could make their political decision making through human-centric perspective. So this is like also a political tool to focus on different people in our societies, basically saying that, okay, we need to consider people chasing job without an unemployment period. And as we know, every one of us can do that already, right? So where we need our AI network. So that is basically starts with asking that, does our people really know how they are doing in the labor market or between the jobs or chasing the jobs? And the better understanding people themselves has and the better information we get out of these people, the better we can optimize the service provisioning for the people. And that is the place we utilize this Aurora AI network approach. And so basically Aurora AI isn't a platform, it's more like a network where that tries to connect the dots from different platforms and services. And we already, for example, there will be questions of how we shift, let's say, service ticket between the services. We already know that if we have, there is one example that has been done with immigration unit and taxation unit and patent and register office. They have they have utilized one technology. It's 3 different instances, so they basically all of these organizations owns their own instance and their own chatbot, but still that's the same technology, so that is basically much more easier to share this service ticket between the services. Now we try to figure out how this is being done technologically agnostical way. And when the people themselves are like basically living their life, and the better we can suggest different services around this life event, the better it should be. Yeah. And this is the last slide. So this is just a way to approach this whole ideology about this Aurora AI network, where as we are putting people at the center of everything, and their multidimensional well-being and the situational analysis, as we were mentioning, this analysis isn't about the individual data. It's more like a snapshot about the characteristics of people in Finland. And now we are building part of this network through this kind of situational analysis bot, who are really trying to have a dialogue with our people by asking how are you and what is your real situation, trying to get through these dialogue trees to understand better and better of what is his or her situation and what is the cluster he or she belongs to. And through that we optimize the service provisioning found from the service catalog. Yeah, that is basically the ideology about Aurora AI, and the next 3 years says that how the project itself is turning out.
Yep.
Sorry, just to clarify, this is an AI bot asking how are you and so on? Or is it?
It's kind of an AI bot, but it could be much more intelligent than today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was going to end up with that we are at the very beginning of this journey. There's really a lot of room for cooperation around the AI, the technologies used in the bots, in data science, in clustering. You can imagine that if you have data of 5.5 million people, there's kind of a lot of clustering to do. At the same time, it would be great to have a fabricated version of Finland that is not based on real people, but based on people who somehow are representative of the Finnish people, that could be used for testing purposes or for experimenting things, which is going to be impossible with the real people's data. And
Yeah.
in addition, I see many other technical things where there is a room for research.
Yeah.
To foster this research, we are establishing a network of researchers around the Aurora AI, called Aurora Research Network.
Yeah.
So very imaginative name. And you are, of course...
That's like every government program has.
Exactly. So you are, of course, welcome to join and seek the role that suits you the best.
Yeah, Tommi is running this network, and that is part of the whole network group. That we have like 10 of different these kind of groups that are combined within this program in general, and this research is one of those.
And for certain types of research work, there is even modest amounts of funding available. In particular for research that is needed by other parts of Aurora AI, so not for basic research.
Yeah. So hopefully this gave you some sort of an interest about this program, and you are willing to participate, at least to drill down to seek your own options to connect with this program.
Francis.
Just one quick question related to the Aurora AI program itself. Given that you know your resources and mandate and everything, apart from the 3 prototype services we saw earlier, what realistic expectation that we can see at the end of the program by the end of 2022?
Yeah.
What would be available apart from these 3?
Yeah, we're actually already building situational analysis about this Evelina, and hopefully there will be results before the summer. So that should help us to start optimizing these services around Evelinas. We have 4 different areas in Finland. We have chosen 4 areas, and all of these areas are the baseline for the whole implementation phase. So we are not trying to build this model for the whole Finland, rather just few areas. And in these areas we are considering the upper elementary school people between 13 to 16-year-old. So basically we have high expectations that we really have on production mode in the end of 22, and hopefully we have the beta version on this at the end of this year. So we need to have some sort of proof about the approach in general.
And of course the bigger thing would be that here's how we build it. So you can copy the same approach to other services in other organizations.
Yeah.
But so thank you very much for the presentation.